I'm Dean Zelinsky, and this is the podcast. Okay, I have my lovely co-host, Jennifer, today.
I'm super stoked to be here. And today we have a special guest joining us as well. We have Chris Caffery from Siberian Orchestra coming in to talk to us a little bit about touring, his life, everything he's kind of been through, and when he started in the music industry, and how he started working with you. And actually, he plays one of your guitars as well.
Correct. Yeah, I've known him for years. And
how did you guys originally meet?
I think it was through a connection through Megadeth.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because I was friends with those guys. And we ended up making a really cool guitar, and then the relationship just kept growing. But I just want to talk about one thing before we bring Chris on.
Sure.
What was our last podcast?
The first podcast that we did, we talked about your first visit to the Playboy Mansion.
Right.
We talked about all of the wild things you saw there, the people you interacted with, and bringing your family there for pictures.
I probably misspoke a lot of times. I talked about the Playboy Club in the Playboy Resort in Lake Geneva being the Americana today, but it's actually the Grand Geneva.
Grand Geneva. And it doesn't exist at all anymore. Is that correct?
Not the Playboy.
The Chicago version.
Right.
Yeah.
Playboy's done.
All of it's done.
Yeah, I think it's a t-shirt company or something.
Yeah, so we touched on that in the last episode, and we talked a little bit about you being an heirloom tomato farmer as your other passion.
Right.
We talked about you designing your own house, designing furniture for Michael Jordan, all these different things that you've done that I did not realize you had done besides just guitars. So today we're connecting with Chris, and I'm excited to learn about things that he does besides just play guitar.
Right.
There's a lot more to all these people than you realize, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we will bring him on. I just want to say one more thing. It's very hot in Chicago today, right?
It's really hot.
And this is the first day we've actually had to use air conditioning this year because it's been cold prior to.
It has been. It's been a cold spring, into summer, or whatever.
Anyways, so I go to fire up the air conditioner today because, we got a podcast and it's going to be hot, and it didn't work. We were sweating our ass off during the podcast.
We were literally sweating our asses off.
So I just want to...
It's worth noting.
If Jennifer's makeup is melting off her face, it's not...
My skin is melting off my skin.
Okay.
I'm not being honest.
Okay, so we just had to cover that, and we'll take it from there. That's it. So what do we do now?
Let's bring on Chris from Siberian Orchestra.
Okay, here we go. Welcome, Chris.
Great to be here. Great to see you, Dean.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, how are you?
Great, how are you?
Great to meet you, actually.
Great to
This
meet
is
you.
always a good thing.
This is Jennifer.
I know.
My new co-host. It's been a while since we've hung.
I know. It's been a few years, but it's great to see you. It's always great to see you.
Same. Thank you. Same here.
Yeah.
I started doing the podcast, and I get a text one day from Chris, and he's like, love your podcast.
Exactly. And I knew that there was a couple possibilities of me being in this area. And he was like, well, it would be way better if you came and did it in person. And I actually was doing Milwaukee Metal Fest and just happened to be passing by.
Let me just introduce Chris, formerly amazing guitar player. I know Chris from the Siberian Orchestra days. But he had a whole career prior to TSO. And I've been to the TSO show several times, but in recent years, there's two troops. And you used to always play Milwaukee or Chicago, mostly Milwaukee, and then they changed it, and he wasn't playing in this neighborhood so much. So that's why it's been a few years since we hung, but I used to go to the show about every year.
Yeah, when TSO first formed, the very first year, we didn't actually know what was going to happen because there was a Savatage record out. We're going to go back into the career in a second, but since you're talking about the two bands, we did one tour of 7 shows, and actually Chicago was one of the first 7 that we had done. And then the next year, my manager and Paul O'Neill, the founder of TSO and producer, the creator of the band, he came up with the idea of separating and doing both coasts, because this way we were doing a holiday show and there's only so many days you can play between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we separated it as an east to west. Sometimes the east is done Chicago. Recently we hadn't, but then we're doing Green Bay. We had played Milwaukee, but that's when I was singing when we were in Chicago. But it's been a little while. I haven't seen the new schedule, so there is always a chance we might be back, but I don't know yet.
Well, I'll travel this year.
Yeah.
But just so people know, TSO is such a big thing that it has two troops, like two bands playing all the time. And some days the band even plays two shows. They'll play two shows.
Yeah, basically every single week we're on the road. We'll play Wednesday, Thursday, one show, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday we'll do matinees. So there's 8 shows in 5 days.
Wow.
And it's been like that for years. And actually this past year, in the last 40 years, we landed at number 10 in the most tickets sold worldwide out of any bands. So it's been pretty cool. TSO's been on the road since 1999, and the first record actually this year, it'll be 28 years since the first record came out. And it's just it's a great thing to be a part of. And every single year I speak to the crowd when we're playing, and I'll ask them how many people had seen us before, because we do a charity presentation before every show. We give $1 to every ticket to a different local charity. And every time I ask that question, half the crowd will be raising their hands. So it's pretty amazing that after, over 20 years on the road, that we'll still have that many, newcomers coming as well as the people that have had seen us before. So it's really awesome. And I think last year we passed the $20 million mark that we've been able to give back to different local charities by these concerts. And
$20 million.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Amazing.
Well, it's something that Paul, my producer, he passed away in 2017, and he always believed that, it was the single acts that people did for people that would mean a lot, and his lyrics and the stories in these records, because when we play live, the first half of the show, we have a story. It's kind of like a rock opera. And then in the second half, we have 20 semis of trucks and lights and pyro and every, toy that you can get. I always tell people I have the greatest playground on the planet in the second half, but he really always wanted to give back. And that was an important thing about it. I remember when we recorded these records in New York City, and I would watch him, because I would be in the studio even if we weren't playing on it, because Paul, he hated to travel back and forth by himself late at night, and I would go back to, where he would go to his writing apartment. I'd go to in Queens. He had a brownstone in lower Manhattan, but he liked to go to this one little apartment to write music. And we would be on our way to the taxi cab, and it would take him an hour to get there, because he had to stop by every homeless person and hand them, hundreds and this and that. And and he would do that everywhere we went. And it was just one of these things that we finished a New York City theater date when we first started playing in the theaters. And he handed us all, right before Christmas, is everybody take here. He handed us $200 bills, or not $200 bills, but
where do I get one of those?
He handed us each 2 $100 bills, but he said he wanted us to take it and tip people really well for Christmas. So I get I lived in Astoria, Queens, which is over the river outside of Manhattan. I get in the taxi cab to go home to my apartment, and the taxi cab fare was like $15. And I tried to give this Indian guy who was my cab driver the 100, and he goes to get his change, and I was like, no, you keep that. And he looks at me and he goes, I just take no counterfeit. I was like, it's not. He didn't think that anybody in his mind would ever tip somebody $85 on a cab ride. I'm like, it's a real, no. And so I had to get a 20 out. So the guy went from a $85 tip to a $5 tip, because he didn't even believe what I was doing. But that, that was the magic of that. And like I said, we've done that since the beginning. And Paul, I'll make the long story long. I met him when I was 17. I had a club band, and everybody asked how I actually made it in music, and I tell them, fake ID. And I go, how does that work? Well, New York had a drinking age of 19. I had an older brother who was 19 years old before the change. So I was 17, he was 19, and he had, back then there was no photos on your driver's license. And
that was genius, wasn't it?
Yeah. But he had credit cards and a social security card, and he had that paper license. And then when they raised the age to 21, they did ask for photo ID, but they still grandfathered in the old licenses. So we would go to clubs. He would hand me his ID. I wasn't drinking, but I would walk in. So I would get to go to all these really cool places to hang out. And there was a place in New York City, in this Times Square building, that had the news going around it. That had a Thursday night where all the rock stars hung out, like Whitesnake was in town, Coverdale would be there, everybody. So I went up there, and I knew of this band, Heaven, that was playing at the time. I actually saw them at a club on New Year's Eve, because I was friends with a guy named Ray Gillen, who was managed by Paul O'Neill. with a band called Rondinelli, and Ray had gotten into Black Sabbath at the time, and I knew Ray, and I went to see Heaven with him at New Year's Eve, and I met Paul, and I didn't really know what was going to happen from there, but that band needed a guitar player. Their guitar player, his name is Mitch Perry, left, and the singer, Alan Fryer, this Australian guy, I met him in the club, and I happened to have a cassette on me that I recorded when I was 17 years old of my original band, and I handed him this, and he said, well, I'm going to LA tomorrow to do some auditions for guitars, but I'll call you when I get back. But he wound up calling me from California to tell me that he wanted me to do this gig. So at 17, I got into this band that was on Columbia that was managed and produced by Paul.
Okay, so was Paul working for Columbia at that time?
Paul was working for a company called Lieber Krebs, which was like the biggest rock and roll management company ever. They were doing AC/DC, Aerosmith, the Scorpions, Ted Nugent, Def Leppard. It was humongous. You'd walk into that office at any given day and you would see, Steven Tyler laying on a couch and, David being there. And it was kind of overwhelming to me as a little kid at that time. But I got into that band and we were writing songs and recording for a new record, but the singer kind of had some mishaps and was not making them too happy. And Paul had decided to part ways working with that band Heaven, but he said, look, I'm producing this band called Savatage for Atlantic Records. And Paul was in the process of making this record called Hall of the Mountain King. He goes, look, I'm making this record and I'm producing the sound and it's really big. And they're only a 4-piece band and I want them to have another guitar player. He said, and I'm working on a tour. He was very good friends with Wendy Dio, Ronnie Dio's wife. I'm working on a tour with Dio and Savatage for December and this was 87, 88. And he goes, I want you to do that. So I said, okay, that would be great. I learned all the Savatage songs, every song there was, hoping I was going to have that tour because it would have been fun. I was only, that was a year and a half after I got into Heaven. So I just turned 19.
Wow. And
the manager of Savatage calls me up and goes, we got some news. Savatage took a guy from Florida to do this gig. And I said, no, they didn't. I said, this is my gig. I said, I want this gig. So I paid for a plane ticket to fly myself to Florida. And I went and auditioned for them. They didn't even pick me up at the airport. I had to get, it was funny. They kind of, they stumped me at the airport. So I went and played. We played, they go, what song you want to play? I said, anything. And they go, anything. I knew every one of their songs. I think they had 5 records out at the time. And they picked one of the most obscure ones. And we played it. And then we played one more. And they were just looking at each other kind of funny. And they left the room and they came back and are like, you got this gig. It sounded like Chris Oliva was playing guitar with Chris Oliva. Our rhythm styles were exactly the same. His lead sound, he was way ahead of me as a lead player, and he had different influences, but rhythm-wise, it sounded like a stereo recording of the record in this rehearsal room, and I got that gig. I didn't get to stay in the band at that time, but we were out with Dio and Megadeth. It was a really great learning experience of being an arena tour when you were 19, but
wow.
When Savatage went to do Gutter Ballet, that record, I'd done a couple other bands for Atlantic. I did a record with the band called Big Mouth, which was like a heavy metal rap band, and I did a record with the band they had called Dirty Licks, where I really didn't like the singer that much. I actually put a cigarette out in my arm to see what it would do while I was driving a rental car out in Hollywood.
He put the cigarette out?
He put it out on my arm, and God rest his soul. I don't want to talk anything ill about somebody who passed, but I didn't get along with him, and he said he wanted me to play things his way or no way, and I said, well, I guess I'm going to be playing them no way. And then the Oliva brothers, John and Chris, called me up and asked me to go to the studio and asked me. It was funny because Chris Oliva looked at me and said, even though we think you're a dick, we want you to join a band. And that was it. And
they thought you were a dick?
Yeah, they were joking, but I was 20. I was 20 at that time, and I joined Savatage for Gutter Ballet, and I actually had older brother who I had a band with when I was a kid. And when I was in Savatage, he got really... They kind of messed with his head. And back at that time, it was not cool to play with more than one band. It just wasn't.
Right.
Now everybody plays with 80 bands. Back then, if you played with more than one band, you were a whore. So, I should have just stayed in Savatage and worked with my brother. I left Savatage for an album, and I started working with the singer in Savatage, and we did a thing called Dr. Butcher when he was out of the band, but then his brother died in a car accident. He was killed by a drunk driver. So we went back to Savatage, and the first record we did together in Savatage was called Dead Modern Dead. Now, that record had an instrumental on it that went dun, 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 and that was the song that everybody knows from TSO.
That was the start of TSO.
Yeah, and it was Christmas Eve, Sarajevo. We were rehearsing for a European tour or something with Savatage, and our bass player came into rehearsal, and he's like, Johnny Lito Middleton, he goes, I was just driving down the road, and I heard Christmas Eve Sarajevo on Mix 96. I think it was down there. This guy Mason Dixon was playing the song, and he was very instrumental in the whole birth of everything too. And first we were like, wow, Savatage is on Mix 96. Second, we were like, why are you listening to Mix 96? Because it was like an adult contemporary station, but they got that song. I think Mason had got it from a guitar player, I believe at the time was in Kansas. He said, you got to listen to this track. And he played it. And they told us that normally when songs were number one most requested, they would get like 20 requests a day. So that song was getting like 300-400. Wow. And
wait, what guy in Kansas?
I don't know who it was at the time. That's Mason Dixon just told me. I heard, it was a guitar player at the time. So
okay.
You would probably know better than me at that point in time. But plus I spent a lot of time in Florida, so I don't have a lot of memories of some of that stuff. But he told me that we were getting like 300-400 requests a day, and they turned that on to Scott Muni at a station in New York City, and that same thing happened. So Atlantic heard this happening in New York City, and they tried to get as many copies out to the stores of the Savatage record as possible then. But, the holidays time passed by, and they're like, well, we got to figure out a way, to get this song out. It's a hit. It's a hit. Jason Farmer, our A&R guy, and Paul were thinking, and Paul always had this idea of doing this band that at the time he never told me what the name was going to be, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, but he always wanted to have a band that had like limitless creative possibilities. So where you could have, one guy and a vocalist and an acoustic guitar player, or a band with an orchestra. Even in the Savatage videos, we had orchestras, and we had that element in our music. And we had a record that was called Streets that had a story behind it, and the record we had, Dead When They're Dead, that had Christmas Eve 12/24, had a story on it. They were rock operas. So Paul brought his vision to life. He was actually working on the first TSO record for Broadway, and it was a record called Romanoff that we still have the music for but haven't released yet because Paul had passed, and it's something that we definitely want to get out for people to hear. But he's released this Christmas trilogy, and we started with Christmas Eve and Other Stories, the first record, and it just took off from there. Nobody really knew it was going to happen. I mean, it just started taking off. And next thing you know, I'm in a tuxedo playing Rosie O'Donnell's show, and then I'm doing, we go to do theaters, and we had the Savatage guys. We didn't know what to expect. We got up on stage, and we were like, what's going to happen? I just remember there was dry ice rolling off the stage into this 80-year-old lady's face, and she was choking and gagging, and but it just took it. Within 3 years, we were headlining arenas, and we had the biggest show in the world out there that you could have, and that could fit in an arena, and it just took off, and it's been an incredible thing to be a part of. But like I said, I always say that if I didn't go to that club with that fake ID, I don't know. So when they asked me,
it's a long way to circle back.
Yeah. Right.
Hold on, I've got a couple questions, and then Jennifer, obviously want to talk about TSO, but we also got to talk about how'd you start playing guitar? Yeah,
that was kind of what I was wondering. And
but I have two questions, and then let Jennifer, and then we'll go back to TSO. But Paul Paul saw something in you and wanted to take you for the ride. That's right, when you were...
Yeah, I mean, I think there was just an element about me, I think it could have had something to do with my look at the time, too, because MTV was taking over, and I kind of the pretty boy thing. But I was a really...
We got competition here.
I was a really energetic... I was an energetic stage performer, and I mean, at the time, MTV was the biggest thing on the planet, so I had a little bit of that pretty boy kind of image that people like to have for that. And... that was really what kind of settled it. But I had a fire in me. I was a shy little kid. I was I weighed less than I did. I weighed less then than I did when I was 8 inches shorter. So I was kind of a fat kid with glasses and 156 IQ. I was first in my class, but I was not very social, and I loved my heavy metal music and playing guitar. So when I got onto that stage, all the aggravation that I had of being a kid, of not having that social life, kind of came out through that. I asked a girl who would dance when I was in school, and I overheard other girls talking about it, and they're like, ew, I'd rather go out with nobody than him. So there was just a whole lot of emotion in me that when I got on that stage, that's when I felt the safest, if that's a weird way to say it. It's like I felt safe on stage, and people got to see me without being worried about, over analyzed.
So it's almost like you're acting, like you were a different person on stage?
No, I think I was more
yourself.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
that's
off
what I was gonna
stage,
say.
I was afraid to be me. It's like I was afraid to let that energy out. I didn't want to let people think you were too weird or too outspoken. And I was always, like I said, a shy, nice kid. I never drank until I met John Oliva, and it was like I was really well behaved. So it was like a lot of different habits and that, but that's pretty much I think what did it. And I did practice a lot and played. Guitar came to me pretty quick, but I just played a lot. I played guitar all the time.
How old were you when you first picked up the guitar, and who were some of your biggest influences? Was there anybody that you just super looked up to?
It was funny. I would go to there was a thing called the Sears surplus store, and my mother would go because it had really cheap things, and my family didn't really have a lot of money at all. So I would see these guitars up on the walls there, and I would just stare at them. And I thought electric guitars just really looked cool. I thought there was something about them that was cool. And I started listening to the Beatles when I was 5. When I was in first grade or kindergarten, I think it was first grade, I did show and tell. I sang Help. It was the first thing I ever did. I sang a Beatles song, and then
The song Help? Or something off the album?
The song Help.
That's a great song.
And
I've been listening to that song a lot recently. I love the Beatles as well. That is such a great song. It really is.
I always liked the heavier part of the Beatles. So when I think I was like 7 years old, my neighbor bought me Wings Over America as a Christmas present. And that was that triple vinyl record that Paul McCartney had. And the front cover that had the stage and the double neck and the Les Paul and the smoke. And that record had more of the heavier songs on it, Rock Show and all those songs. So I was like, okay, this is what I think I really want to do is this. And I got guitars, but I didn't really start playing. My older brother was a drummer, and like I said, we didn't have a lot of money, so my mom was able to afford the sticks and the drum pad, and I started taking drums, and I was like, well, I want to be a musician. Drummers hate when I say that, but I went and started taking guitar lessons when I was 11, and around that time is when I got Kiss Alive. I bought Kiss Alive in Boston, the first record, the same day, with my lawn mowing money. And it was pretty much it from there. I just started playing. By the time I was 13, I was playing in bars my mom had to go. When I was 16, my club band, which was called Anti, A-N-T-I, we actually opened for the band Overkill that I played with last night at that Milwaukee Metal Fest with Doro. And
that's cool.
The second show I did opening for Overkill was Metallica, Overkill, and my band. And that was Metallica's first time on the East Coast. And it was really a funny story about that is I knew the guy from one of the people from the record company, and they called me up and said, Chris, Metallica needs a place to stay. And I was a 16-year-old kid. I was in high school. And I asked my mom, and she said no.
Mom,
so
can Metallica
didn't stay in my house. So I'm like, my life probably would have been a lot different if Metallica... and then we got thrown off the stage because my singer lit off pyro. But that, from there I just...
Typical metal behavior.
Yeah.
So Metallica never stayed at your house?
They never stayed at my house, but we... we did that show, and then I just, like I said, I had the things kind of rolled over really quick. I graduated high school when I was 16. I took 2 years, junior and senior, and one, and I loved guitar. I loved, all the rock guitarists that were there, but there was one in particular that I really liked because he was a lefty and I was a lefty, and he played guitar righty, and there wasn't a lot of lefty guitars in the music store. So Rick Emmett from Triumph was one of my favorite guitarists as a player, and just was one of those things that I thought was cool. And I liked Michael Schenker a lot because I thought his leads always talked. When you heard those leads, you could hear Michael Schenker talking, whether it was UFO or his MSG first record. That the guitar solos were so
it's
different.
Funny you should mention that, because those are two guitar players that played my guitars.
Yes, and I knew that, and I always wanted to get a hold of one of your guitars, but the store I had in my town didn't have them, and I don't think I was actually able really to afford them right away. So I would get kind of like Hondo Les Pauls and cheaper things at that time. But I always knew from the the headstock and the people that I liked playing his guitars when I saw it, and also he had the hottest chicks always around him, which I see again 40 years later. Some things haven't changed, but I mean, it's just Dean. Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a couple similarities. Did you notice any, Jennifer? Between Chris and I.
One thing I noticed is that you used your mowing the grass money.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny. The last podcast that we did, Dean talked about mowing the grass for some lawyer.
At what age?
Around the same age,
12,
right?
13,
And
yeah.
And he had done the same thing and just started really young and saved up his guitar money. And
what else?
The other thing too is that both of you are left-handed. Well, you're left-handed, but you play a right-handed guitar.
Right.
And is Jimi Hendrix like that as well?
No, he plays
it upside down.
He played a right-handed guitar, left-handed.
Upside down. It's flipped.
John Oliva does that. He flips the right-handed guitar over and plays it lefty in that direction, but he can play the righty one the other way too. It's just so weird. And he had some really cool writing styles that came because he left the little strings on top.
Yeah.
So he didn't, he didn't restring it.
Hendrix played upside down too.
Did he leave the little strings on top?
I think so.
I think so.
But you know what? You guys had said something earlier about being a lefty that played a righty. You said that there's some types of advantages.
Well,
what
they
are
say
those?
there's a technique advantage your brain connects with your left hand better. So I wasn't finger picking that my left hand would have a little bit more activity than that. I don't know if that's the truth or not, but I can do a bunch of things. I bat righty and I play pool righty and I pitched lefty. I bat
righty. I swing a golf club righty.
I bat lefty, but I'm a righty.
Really?
Yeah.
We're going to have a softball tournament.
I always I've been teaching myself how to throw and do things with my right hand because I'm always like, if I did something with my left hand,
Can you write with your right hand? Because you're left-handed.
I'm sloppy writing, so either way, it's just as bad. So it doesn't matter.
Hold on. Did you ever meet Rick Emmett?
Yes, I have. But I didn't really get to be very friendly with him. I met him in a few shows he did. He wasn't one of the ones that I actually had met more. I got to meet Michael a bunch of times because Paul was actually working with him in management. And so I'd met Michael. And Paul had one of the old black and white, before you were doing the black and white guitars, your Dean Zelinsky versions of the Schenker black and white V. I got to play one of the original black and white ones he had, which was really fun. It was sitting at Paul's house. He had storage there of some of the things of the artists he played with, which was...
I got two here.
Oh, do you?
Two Dean ones. But I got kind of a funny story about Schenker. I mean, not Schenker. I got funny stories about Schenker. I got funny stories about Rick Emmett.
Okay.
We did this Dean guitar thing. And it was like, we had all these rock stars at the NAMM show. And the show's over, and it was like the Sunday morning, and we're at brunch, and I'm sitting there with Mountain. What's his name?
Leslie West.
Yeah, okay. So it's a Sunday morning. The NAMM show's over, and I'm at brunch with Leslie West. And all of a sudden, Rick Emmett, they're all in for our NAMM show, and Rick Emmett walks down. He's wearing like a suit, and Leslie takes one look at him and says, "You look like a fucking accountant." And Rick Emmett turns to Leslie and says, "Yeah, maybe I could tell you why you got no money left," or something like that.
Oh.
So it was kind of a funny exchange. Rick was really quick with the comeback.
Yeah, I did NAMM for you at one point in time, and Leslie was there doing the same signing session I did, and that was the first time I really got to meet him in TSO when we played in Mississippi. He came up and did Mississippi Queen, and that was before he had passed, obviously, and before he had his real problems with his feet. But it was great, and I remember he was up with one of your guitars playing that with me, and I sat on the bus with him all day that day, and we were talking, and he was such a great guy, but he would always tell me, he's like, you gotta get the sound is in the picking end, and you gotta make sure you get that squeal out of it. He loved to make the pick squeal on the strings, and he would just
he was a great guy. He was funny as
he had that really funny New York, Long Island comedy thing that a lot of my friends had. You know,
so he was great. He was very entertaining.
Yeah, exactly.
And he had Mississippi Queen.
Exactly.
Corky told me how that song was written. You ever heard that story?
No, I might have, but probably forgot it. I might have been out with the Olivas at that time.
I think Corky told me it was Corky's song. And he said he was playing on a riverboat or something on this cruise or somewhere, I don't know. But he says he's playing and he's looking at this really hot chick dancing. I think that must have been in Mississippi, which would make sense.
Yeah.
Riverboat, Mississippi, something like that. But so he said the power goes off and there's no sound, but he's playing drums and obviously he can keep going, And he's watching this girl dancing, and he says, all I could think about is if I stop, she's going to stop dancing. And he was just so mesmerized by his dancing. So he just kept drumming, and he kept, in his mind, he's sitting there going, Mississippi Queen, you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And he's drumming, and she's kept dancing.
See, now I have my own vision of that. And he started to hit a cowbell. And she kept dancing to the cowbell.
It could have been.
With more cowbell.
All I'm saying is, and then obviously Leslie probably made the song great.
Yeah.
But it was a cool story. We have so much to talk about. Chris has like an illustrious career.
Yeah.
I want to talk about two things. Your TSO is the largest gross 10th in history, right?
Yeah, the last 40 years, we actually just passed the Grateful Dead because they're obviously not playing anymore, but our last tour put us to the number 10 spot in the last 40 years worldwide of overall ticket sales. And that's all bands, not just metal bands or that guy. It's every
So Frank
every
Sinatra, too.
Exactly. Everybody, which is, it's a really, it's kind of surreal for me because I don't see me or anything I do as any different than, you know, before I played my first show ever. And you walk in those arenas and you're playing 2 shows a day, and there could be 30,000 people in those 2 shows, and the other band's playing, and there could be 28,000. So you got over 50,000 people. You have a stadium worth of people watching this band in the one day, and it's just one of those things that is so great to be a part of. But I just, you know, I really appreciate. I love what I do. Like I say, I consider myself to have the greatest playground on the planet. You know, I get to.
Well, I'll tell you something. I always use TSO as an example because how many guys are on stage, or how many people are on stage?
Well, we hire 7 local string players, and we have 1 string player that travels with us that conducts them, and then we have 2 guitars, 2 keyboard players.
But just total, there's like, it seems like 15 people on stage.
Well, there's 10 singers because the different singers will sing different characters, and then we have a storyteller that tells Paul's story.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Let me just clarify. There's 1 million people on stage.
Yeah, and then you had mentioned there were 7 semi-trucks worth of...
No, it's 20. We have 20 trucks.
20 trucks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Of all the gear all the things. So once you guys establish a venue, you'll stay there for how long typically? Like, how long
that's
is the stretch?
incredible thing. We'll do matinee shows, and these guys come from the city before, and they get that show up and running by 3 PM, and it's insane to watch it. Watch it happen.
It's one show.
So how big is the crew then?
There's a lot of people. I believe. I mean, when I get my laminate on that tour, my number I think is somewhere around like 73. And you know, they put the band after the crew. I think our stage crew is somewhere between the drivers of all the trucks and buses and our crew. I mean, there's easily over 100 people on that tour that aren't in the band, and there's 2 tours, so there's a lot of people out there. And what they do to get that thing together, it's insane. They pull into those,
and the lighting. It's a huge show. So it's the most amazing show out there as far as just.
Well, TSO has the advantage of this. We basically get to try anything new. You know, my lighting designer, Brian Hartley, he got the red light to be able to find out what's the newest thing, and they same with our pyro and our laser companies. They all get the newest technology, and TSO basically we work on Paul's idea was there was no budget, you know, whatever it needed to do to make the show bigger than the year before. Because our idea was we always had to outdo ourselves. Since there was really that time of the year, no competition, we were just trying to be better than we were the year before. So the show always got bigger, and the new technology is always so cool to see because every single year we'll watch things come in. Like last year we had, 30-foot inflatable nutcrackers, and we had an inflatable snow globe back by the soundboard where a girl actually sang lead vocals inside the snow globe. Yeah. With the lights and it was kind of crazy. I had played a joke on things in the rehearsals though, because I saw it looking like a little fish tank. So I bought some inflatable Nemos from Amazon, and they were floating my fish around in rehearsal. But it's just an incredible thing. Every year it's different. We always have these really different risers and things you got to get up on and play on. And that's the thing too. It's like you play these shows and you still got to be playing the music, and these things are moving, and you really have to be on your game. It's like one of these things where, you have to stay focused and It's really awesome. We do a lot of rehearsing to make sure that the very first show sounds like the last one. So that's always what we try to do. So
you start off
I
in
had that question. I was thinking that, how often do you rehearse? Because I mean, you've been doing this for how many years now, but you guys still rehearse and you still
well, the idea is we get the set list and then they say show up at rehearsal ready to play.
Right.
And then we finalize, the musical directors will finalize everything we're doing, we rehearse the parts, and then we record the ones that are the main ones for the lighting that has to be programmed. We record them exactly like we're going to play them live, and then they go out into the arenas and piece together the design. The lights are going to follow the music, and it goes to a click, and that clicks in our ear, and we have to start and end with that through the show. So we rehearse that the entire time we're in rehearsal, and we'll probably do, it's usually like 3 days of 2 shows a day of going through the entire show, and then we'll move on. We rehearse both in the same arena, so the East Coast is on one side, and it's really cool to watch the 2 light shows together. But we'll pull out and go to Green Bay, and the West Coast band will stay in Iowa, and they'll play their show, and we'll set up and play one more night in the Green Bay arena, and then we start the next day and do 2, and pretty much by that first show we're playing like we did it already, and it's fun.
I have to finish my point.
Which point?
I start to say there's like a ton of people on stage,
musicians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? All eyes are on the 2 guitar players.
Yes, there is.
And that's the thing about guitars. I always says guitars is the sexiest. Nobody cares about a piano or anything, but the guys holding the guitars, running around the stage, that's where all eyes are all night.
Yeah.
Well, and I have.
And one of them's Chris, by the way.
I have a little bit of luck that I call it luck, but I think it's more or less like I kind of became like Paul's, one of his like little kids, It was like I was like his little brother or little kid. I was actually more like a son sometimes, but I came to him at one point when I first had gotten in touch with Dean, and we were talking about guitars, and I wanted to get some artwork put on the guitar, and our artist Greg Hildebrandt had the coolest arts of wizards and all these other things, so I had the idea of putting some on, and then I got with Dean, and we had talked about him making my guitar. So the first guitar that he made for me was the very first guitar that TSO ever had with TSO artwork on the guitar. And Paul really didn't want to do that, because he's like, if you do that, everybody's going to want it. He just didn't want it to become a thing, to where it became a hassle, and then he had to change it and do new ones. But he still, as much as he was complaining to me about it, he was able to do it. And the only ones that have ever been done have been made by him. So there was a Wizard one, a Night Castle one, there was a Beethoven one, and then recently there was, once he started his laser etching with his Zelinsky guitars, there was 2 with a tiger on it, and one is black and one is white. And
we'll put them up.
Yeah, and there's only one of each guitar, correct?
Yes, and that's the whole thing.
Custom made just for you.
And like I said, I was the only one. Paul's daughter.
There was another thing, because he was a Jackson guy, and he didn't want my brand, I think.
Well, yeah, that was it wasn't even. I think it was one of these things where I think your brand is so identifiable from the stage, especially with the headstocks that you had, that he didn't want anything that took that much focus. So even with the guitars having the art on it, it was, the focus was on the story and the lights, and he didn't, it was kind of like, and then you had the East and the West, so you didn't want the 2 shows different. So I think
continuity.
It was exactly. So, but it worked with this, and then they just kept being so cool, and I was the only one that he let get away with that, which I always felt really honored about, because Paul passed, and those guitars not only they'll be the only ones that ever had that blessing of him to be there, and everyone I have was made by Dean, which they're just awesome. They're fun to play. And
I remember we engraved some guitars that said TSO in the Z-Glide neck. They said TSO.
Well, it says my name on the back of mine, and you did ones for Paul's daughter. You did.
I remember it said TSO Paul O'Neill or something.
Yeah, you did one for Paul, and you did one for Ireland, his daughter. I believe you made and you made those are the only ones that never went to a musician on stage, and I have the black one and the white one that had my name on the back of the neck.
And the tigers.
Yeah, the tiger ones.
And we engraved them and painted them.
Yeah.
I think I did their nails
yes, they
did.
They
about
did.
the same color as
and
Jennifer's lips.
I made a white one that I have for myself. I made one of those because I was telling you guys earlier, I do sea glass art, and I make little mini glass guitars, and I made a little tiger guitar for myself. I have a little white one. I've made some of the the ones that had the Night Castle on it. And
those are amazing, by the way.
it's a lot of fun. This little guy here. Hold
on. Put it down.
I'm putting him down.
Okay.
He's been there, so people might.
Do you want to say it or should I say it?
Oh, you say it.
Which thing?
We got to talk about the elephant in the room.
Oh.
Okay, pick it up.
I didn't even think of that.
Well, that's true. You can ask it differently, but the elephant was actually a gift to me from a.
Pick it up because I don't know.
It's a pretty interesting individual that was in my life. I don't want to go into personal stories, but
no.
I think the elephant became.
No, that's not an elephant.
I don't like selfies. I'm not a selfie fan, and I'm not a photo fan. Really, I can't help that now because everybody takes them. But I would go places and I would take pictures of Wilbur and send the pictures with Wilbur to this person who gave me Wilbur. And eventually, when that person was not in my life anymore, Wilbur was, and he traveled everywhere with me. And when I would meet people like Willie Nelson or, Lemmy or somebody, I would just meet people and I would have them, hey, can you get a picture with Wilbur? And Wilbur just became a thing then. And then I started to make guitar string bracelets, and I had little elephant pendants on it. And Wilbur was the salesman. And he's a great salesman because people really loved him. And I was in Florida hanging out on the beach with a gentleman named Jimmy Sturr, who I hadn't spoken to you about. He won 18 Grammys in polka music, and he's kind of like my dad in some ways too. He lives a few miles away, and I play guitar with his orchestra, and I do some stuff when I'm not on the road with him, and I've been on his TV shows. And he had a condo in West Palm in Florida, and I was actually looking for shark's teeth. And I went to one of his friends.
You said shark's teeth?
Shark's teeth, yeah. And I went to one of his friends for dinner, and I told him that I found one. And I go, oh, did you find any sea glass? I'm like, sea glass, what's that? He goes, oh, a piece of glass on the beach. I'm like, that garbage? So the next day I went to the beach, and I found a piece of green, and I'm walking around, and there was a lady there, and she was looking in the water. I'm like, what are you looking for? She said, sea glass. So I gave her the piece of green glass. Right here. She's like, oh, my God, thank you. And for like the next 2 hours, I couldn't find another one. I'm like, wait a second.
It's rare.
That was like, this is difficult. So I started to get like, I pissed off every grandmother in West Palm because I was up before the light with a flashlight following the shoreline of all the shells that came in the nighttime. And I was picking up all the sea glass from these old ladies, and they'd be out there looking for hours, and they wouldn't find anything. And I had like 80 of them in my pocket.
You snooze, you lose if they sleep in.
I was the sea glass. But what I wound up doing with the sea glass is putting them into little bead cage necklaces. So Wilbur was selling that, and then it just happened when we were on a TSO tour. I started making some Christmas ornaments from the glass and putting them together, and eventually I just became really good at making things from glass art. And I think I've probably made I'm guessing in the last 8 years, maybe it's been I don't know, I would say probably like 4,000, 5,000 pieces of different little glass art things. And
whoa, you sell them, right?
Yeah, and some of them are more involved than others. I take custom orders and
so your fans love your fans love your sea glass.
Exactly.
I love the light up guitar. That was so cool.
And they love Wilbur too. We used to do we'd stop. I believe we're supposed to get back to it eventually, but before the 2020 disaster, we used to go after TSO shows. We would allow anybody who wanted to stay in the arena. We didn't charge them. It was free. We would finish the second show of the day or the only show of the day, and we'd go up there, and sometimes it'd be as many, like 400 or 500 people that would be there, and we'd go through these lines. And they just loved seeing Wilbur because he was online. And then they started bringing him presents. And Wilbur, when I sell things, I give, just like TSO, I give some of the profits to children's cancer and to lots of different zoos and animal organizations. And people just started bringing him presents. And he would get like 2 shopping bags full of presents every night. And at the end of the tour, I would give the toys to Toys for Tots. And he's really become a thing. He's the Metalphant is what he is, and he has his own merchandise too. He has his own Zazzle store, and he's become quite a thing. I'm just looking for the right person to get involved in helping me take him over the edge. Because actually, Paul was going
to. A manager.
Well, I wanted to do Metalphant clothing for kids, and Paul really liked that idea. And one of the last conversations I had on the phone with Paul before he passed was about getting that started. And That hasn't happened yet, but
I would buy a shirt.
I'd like to do that. You know, to make the ones for the little kids with Wilbur on it. But I sell, you know, T-shirts and things, but not really a clothing line where he becomes like the Izod alligator. But
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
You should definitely do that. Very rock and roll.
Very cool. What else we want to talk about? We're going to talk about the fish in the room. So the shellfish in the room.
Oh, right.
What's this?
Hold
on. Oh, there's also the hot sauce.
Well, there's this right here.
Yeah, so Wilbur is not only a salesperson for your, you know, the jewelry and the sea glass, but what else? Wilbur also sells hot sauce. You have a hot sauce project,
Yeah,
correct?
actually, Wilbur doesn't really sell the hot sauce. More or less, that's something I did. I was working with a personal manager of my own in my solo career, a guy named Steve Seabury. And Steve had tons of experience throughout the music business and all different kinds of things. And he started putting on a heavy metal tour in the summer in the United States. And right now my brain is having trouble remembering exactly what the name of the tour was, but
Well, I couldn't remember Leslie West's name.
but Steve had an idea of putting a hot sauce in the merch stand for the tour, and I think it was metal. I'll remember it before we're done talking, or probably once the camera's off. I'm not that slow. But we were having a meeting one day, me and Steve, about my solo career, and I was meeting a friend of mine because I had started making hot sauces. Well, I'm meeting my friend to hand him off some of the hot sauce I made. He was letting me try some of these things, and we were eating lunch, and Steve was there, and he says, "Wow, you know, I'm doing hot sauce for this the metal tour." I almost had the name, but
It'll come to you.
I let him try a jar of the sauce I had, and he calls me up and he's like, "You know what? I want to start a hot sauce company." And that's where he came up with the idea for High River Sauces. So he started High River, and he had, my sauce was called Tears of the Sun, and his first sauce was called Hellacious Hot Sauce. And we started going to the hot sauce conventions and around and the area, and people hated us because we showed up and nobody looked like us. Hot sauce wasn't that popular yet, and we got all the attention because, like, who are these guys showing up? And
Literal rock stars.
Well, they're like the people that make the hot sauces and food. They're artists on their own, and there are people that were more famous than others for what they did.
Yeah.
But Steve kind of just walked in there and took over. He took over that whole industry, and there was a guy named Ed Curry that is the pepper god. Really, he's the dean of hot peppers, and he spliced peppers together. He had a chemistry degree, and
So
I think he actually got kicked out of a couple colleges for making acid in the meantime. But he has a company called Pucker Butt Peppers in South Carolina.
That's a great name.
He invented the pepper. It was called the Carolina Reaper. That was his invention of splice, and it became the hottest pepper.
When you say splice, you mean in the growing process or in the lab, like after
in the seed process? There's some way of, well, I don't know what he does because I'm,
so crossbreeding or something.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he made the Reaper pepper, which was the hottest pepper at the time, hotter than the Ghosts and all the other ones that were a little below it. And then he just made another one called Pepper X. And Pepper X is even hotter than the Reaper. But he also found the point was the actual hottest the pepper can be. He went hotter than Pepper X, and the pepper decomposed itself.
Have you tried any of these?
I've tried the recent one. It's real. It gets hot to the point where you can't really enjoy yourself eating too much, but it's real hot.
I don't know if I'd be brave enough to try it.
Well, we have High River Sauces has become pretty popular. There's that Hot Ones show that's on YouTube.
I've seen that. It's hilarious.
My sauces have been on. Steve's most recent one is going to be on that season 24. But what Steve started doing in New York was a New York City Hot Sauce Expo. And now there's one in Portland. There's one in Chicago. There's one in New York. He had one in Nashville last year. And it'll be back out here in Chicago in the summertime. And I'll go out in the booth and hang out and sell hot sauce and meet people. And it's a lot of fun. And he's just really... He beats the street. I've never seen anybody work as hard at something in my life as Steve does. And the sauce is just it keeps building. You know, I'll turn around and I'll get through my year and hot sauce will be out selling the music. It's like,
so what level of hotness is your hot sauce?
Mine, the first one that I made, Steve wanted to have something that wasn't too hot. His was a little, my recipe was a really sweet one, but it got knocked down. So Tears of the Sun actually had a level that was with habaneros, but it had one that was Ghost too. I mean, my level, I like hot, but the super hots, I like to make ones people can cook with and eat with. Like I make ones that are like, blueberry pancake syrup that people can put on ice cream and stuff like that. So you still
That's
get the
kinda
hot,
cool.
but you still have fun with it. I'm more of like the taste thing. And people ask me why I made hot sauce. And my answer was always, I just wanted to find another way I could be a pain in the ass all the time. So that was
Literally.
I actually have a hot sauce story. I don't know if I want to tell it, but I was we used to go to the Smoky Mountains, and go whitewater rafting and things, and we're in Pigeon Forge or one of those towns, and they have, it's a touristy town. They got the hot sauce store, and I go in the store, and it's, it's nothing but hot sauce and pretty good size, and they got the front counter, and they got like these levels of, and then there's a 10, how hot they are, and then there's one that's in a glass thing with a siren on, a world's hottest hot sauce.
Okay.
So I'm like, how hot, how bad could it be, So I took a chip, and you can sample these, and I take a chip, and I eat it, and it was like really bad. I'm like,
What do you mean really bad?
I mean, like I'm on fire.
Are you sweating?
And I'm panicking.
I need to know.
Was that happen to be Dave's insanity sauce? Is that what you did?
I don't know what it was. It's just the world's hottest hot sauce.
What had happened at that time before these peppers themselves got as hot as they are now? They would take the oil, the capsaicin oil, and that would sit on top of the sauces. So you really had to shake it, but that oil was like 2 million on the Scoville scale.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
The combo of that. Right. And that's, if you dipped your chip into the top of that sauce and that oil was on top, you were getting nailed. And I did that. I was in Cleveland once playing, and our tour bus was leaving with Savatage. We were leaving late at night, and the bus power was off, and I was hungry, and I got a chicken wing, and I dipped the chicken wing in Dave's insanity sauce, and I had the chicken wing dipped in that oil and ate it. I was running down the street yelling. I drank a 2-liter bottle of soda. I was just trying to do anything. My mouth
Soda.
was...
Okay, so
I
that's
feel
where
like
I'm
soda's
at.
the worst.
It is the worst, but at that time I didn't know.
At least it wasn't whiskey or something.
Hold on. So I'm in the store, and I'm like panicking. I'm feeling my pulse. I think I'm going to like check out any second. And I'm like, I need something to drink. And they had this little thing, and they had Gatorade. I never drank Gatorade in my life.
Really?
Yeah, like it was poison to me. So I buy the Gatorade, and I start chugging it. It's not working. And it's kind of like this mini mall place. So I go down I'm like panicking, going down the hall. And all of a sudden, I find this drinking fountain. And I got my head in there, and I'm, just running water and drinking. And there's like this little, like it's kind of a storefront, like right, in eye shot of the area. And this dude standing there, and he's like, hot sauce store? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, they're going to kill somebody someday. And I just got my head in the fountain, just drinking and drinking. I said, can you help me out? He goes, I got Klondike bar. It's the best thing for it.
What?
Yeah. Klondike bars.
Ice cream and milk. Ice cream and milk is the best.
So this guy must have just been by that fountain all his life and could sell a bunch of Klondike bars. So I said, give me 2.
Were you like getting out your credit card?
The ice cream and milk does work. It does.
So I got the 2. By the way, I was only vegetarian in those days. I wasn't vegan. But I would also I got 2, and I start eating, sucking on I can't say. I have the Klondike bar in my mouth. I go outside the store, and there was a Adirondack chair sitting out front, and I just sat there with the Klondike bars in my mouth till I could get better.
Oh my god!
And so that was my hot sauce story.
Well, at these,
and then my kids were like somewhere else. And Susie says, tells them the story. They're like, oh, we got to go back there and get. So they bought a bottle of it, and they're in college. I'm in high school at the time, and of course they had parties, and everybody ate the world's hottest hot sauce.
They made everyone try it.
Yeah, that's just the thing too. People love to go, but they have competitions at these expos that we do, and they'll sit there and do Reaper pepper eating contests, and they'll have like this hot sauce is poured on pizza and meatballs and stuff. And these people will sit there, and I don't want to get gross, but I watch these people run off that stage to a garbage can vomiting, every time there's a show. And they have to sign a release to do the contest, but they have the world's record. Guinness has been there for the people that eat the most of those, and Ed is actually won Guinness World Record twice for the hottest pepper. So both his Pepper X and his Reaper had won that level. So it's pretty fun. It's a whole different world. But I think the food critics might be even worse than the music critics, because everybody thinks they know how to cook, you know. So it's like, but everybody's taste buds are different. So you can make a hot sauce and somebody can hate it, they can love it. The same way with making a music single. It's like, you know, everybody's got different musical tastes, and is what it is.
So that makes me think of another story that we had heard from you. Something about like developing an allergy, a shellfish allergy.
Yeah.
This is a public service announcement because
it actually should be. I think it's really important for people to get the blood work for allergies, and this is the reason why. We were on road with TSO, and one week we were in New England, and I was eating like a lobster sandwich, one of those lobster rolls, and I kind of got a weird little headache, and I got a Benadryl at a truck stop, and I didn't really think much of it. We went into Ottawa, and I went and ate all-you-can-eat mussels at a place that I ate them at the year before.
Okay.
And I'm eating tons of them. And I went back to my hotel room, and I was hanging out with some of the people from the tour, and all of a sudden, I felt like I was about to float out of my body. It was the weirdest thing ever, and I tried to run for the door. I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I face planted into the hotel desk. My teeth went through my lip. That's where I got the scar here. And
the hotel in the lobby?
In the room. The desk in the room. And
Yeah.
I actually was apparently, because I wouldn't be able to know, but I wasn't bleeding, and I released my bowels. I won't be gross, but I came to, they cleared the blood out of my throat, and I went and, you know, jumped in the shower. It took me to the emergency room, but I technically, you know, believe I remember seeing a bunch of faces over me telling me it wasn't my time yet, and then I woke up and
were there people there or no?
There was
but I mean, were those people telling you it's not your time, or that was different?
There was people telling me, and it might have been people I knew.
Well,
yeah,
people on the other,
when that was when I stopped breathing and shit myself. You know, it was like I was down, I was out, I was done, and I went to the hospital, and I actually did manage to play the show we did. We were in Ottawa, and we had only one show on that Wednesday. Well, this happened on a Monday, so I had a day to heal, but my lip was kind of sewn shut, and we were on stage, and I was looking at people's reviews of the show online, and they're like, everybody was smiling on stage, but Chris, it was like my face was sewn together. Wow. You know, I was lucky to be, I've never missed a show in my life. I'm the only person at TSO that's never missed a show since the band started, is for all the band I've been in anyway. And
that's impressive.
Wow.
Take a minute and really process that. Yeah. How many shows do you think you've done in your
I don't know.
It's
been a lot. It's
like thousands?
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's just one of these things where it was so weird to get that, and I carry an EpiPen and all that kind of thing, but I just think people should know, because I had no idea, because like I said, I ate those mussels in that same restaurant the year before and nothing happened. So I think allergy tests may be more important than people realize, just because when it gets to that level, there's really nothing you can do, you know. And that's one of those things that it was extremely scary, because you tried to run somewhere and you felt like you feel yourself leaving your body when you have a seizure like that, and it was just crazy. And I just like, I gotta go, and I tried to run for the door, and I face planted, and it was one of these things that was really. So
you felt like if you kept moving, you'd survive or something? Yeah.
I was trying to run from whatever was happening to me. Like maybe I think I knew I needed help or something like that, but I just knew that if I was sitting there, something really bad was gonna happen. It was just, it was crazy. It was weird. It's a feeling unlike any on the planet when you have one of those seizures. It's crazy.
You still played the show.
So wait, how did you get revived?
Yeah. We went to the hospital, right?
In the room, I don't really know. I was told there was blood. There was blood in my throat, and my breathing tubes were cleared, and I guess I started to breathe again, because my breathing was blocked by the blood. Mm-hmm. And you know, that's how. And then I turned around and like I said, I got into the shower and changed my clothes and went to the hospital, and they were like, yeah, you had an anaphylactic seizure, and I went on an IV and stayed in there for a little bit. I mean, I'd been in the hospital on the road before from food poisoning and things like that, but nothing like this one. And it was just weird. It was really different, to say that much.
Is there anything special that you do to kind of comfort yourself when you're on the road? You spend a lot of time on the road and staying in hotels. You know, I know earlier you showed us that when you stay for Christmas, what you do to hotel rooms. Can you talk to us about that? I think that's so great.
I love Christmas. So when I had to leave to go on the road that time of the year, I brought it with me. You know, it's like I love decorating, and I just started
just to be clear, TSO only tours at Christmas times.
Right now we have records, three full studio records and a couple EPs that are not holiday records, and we have done tours that were non-holiday, but since Paul's passed, we're kind of working on keeping his music and the memory alive and the magic that he had. So it's a slow process in getting back to the ones that weren't, because he was the one that put together doing the non-holiday tour. So we did this thing called Beethoven's Last Night, where we played out. You had actually, I believe you came to see one of those shows. It wasn't at holiday time.
Right.
But I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but I kind of remember seeing you maybe at a time that wasn't Christmas too, because you did that guitar that had the Beethoven figure on it. And right now we just go for November and December, and that's what we did for until 2010 or 11. I think we'd only done that, and I just kept grabbing every year different decorations, and I have a road case that's been on the road for over 23 years, 24 years. I think maybe this year might even be the 25th year. This year is the 25th year that we've been on the road. Will be this year.
25 years.
Yeah, because it was 1999, so this will be year 25.
And you've never missed a show.
Never missed a show.
Someone needs to give you an award.
I actually had 104.3 fever for swine flu, and I still played. I was barfing into a garbage can. I played 2 shows that day in Indy.
He died and came back to make a show.
I know, that's
I popped my NCL and got athlete steroids injected in my knee and played, and
still just rocked out.
I won't miss one. It's I have to be there. I just want to be there. So, but I just started decorating and doing it. I mean, our schedule was so busy. When I was younger, it was easy to do things on the days off. Now you really need to keep your energy for those, because the stage has actually gotten bigger. So when we were in theaters and when we first started the arenas, we were just pretty much covering an arena stage. Now we put these wings on the side and we move around the arena, so it's gotten even more physical.
Aren't you also going up?
Yeah, exactly.
And do you train for it? I know it sounds silly, but do you walk on a treadmill and practice guitar?
I don't do that, but I go to the gym. If I'm not in the gym, 7 days a week, all year long, so I don't lose my physical activity.
Even if you're traveling, do you have memberships at multiple gyms, or how does that work?
Well, I have Anytime Fitnesses in my town, but I'll go to the hotel gym, or I'll walk. If we're in a city that I like, I'll walk. I like to take pictures of old churches and things like that. I left to go play this show in Chicago, and I drove from New York. I got up at 5 in the morning and went to the gym because I was afraid I wasn't going to get to my 10,000 steps. And I managed to drive from New York to Chicago and get 10,000 steps somehow in the same day.
That's so impressive.
Not Chicago to Milwaukee. But you have to. I don't want to, muscles if you don't use your muscles when you get older, they kind of don't think they need to be used. When you're younger, your muscles will still work like that, but you need to keep them working as you get older to keep them active, and that's an important part about it. But we don't get a lot of time off, but I just do the same kind of routine every day. I'll get in my room, then I'll get up, and if I can, I'll go out and take pictures of things and bring Wilbur around. It's like, where's Wilbur today? And I'll put him somewhere else. People try to find him in the photo and stuff like that. But there's really a lot of what I do is I try to save all my energy I can for the stage. So I travel and stay in the bus. I don't go into the arenas to use the dressing room. I have a shower and all my stage clothes and everything in the bus, so I can go in between the 2 show days and I actually take a nap. I remember I did that metal show with Dee Snider, and they were asking D, what do you do before you go on stage? She's like, all I do is I sit up there, push up there, this and that and the other thing. Chris, what do you do? I go, I take a nap.
Yes, I love this so much.
That was like,
I relate to this so hard. I love a good nap.
I don't have any warm up. I just did that, and I also, when I worked with Chris Oliva, he always said this thing about how when the people asked if you warmed up, he says, the first 2 songs. So I kind of I got my hands to the point where they were strong enough to where if I ever had a situation where I couldn't warm up, I didn't play that much different than if I did. And I think it's a bad habit for somebody to have to warm up to play, because you could get into a situation where you can't warm up. So it's not that you're going to be absolutely perfect not warming up, but you do, by the second or third song, get that warmed up in your hand, but your hands were still 80-90% before you get to the first song. And I've always done that with my hands. I've worked them a lot on acoustic guitars and just doing mindless, like things Rick Emmett used to do on his solos, where he would play without the pick and he'd hold this thing. That exercise, it just strengthens your forearm muscles and your fingers so you can move.
Yeah, I was wondering that because clearly the show that you participate in and you've built is so meticulous. So would you just spend thousands of hours over the years just running it with a click, just making sure you can do it without looking? Because you said there's a lot going on.
Well, a lot of stuff I've played thousands of times too, but I'm really bad about that, because there are people that will spend countless hours working on having the perfect things, and I'm kind of one of these people where me and Al Pitrelli, even though Al plays, I played a lot of the solos on the record that people are supposed to play live. He never plays his solo the same way he recorded it. I never play things. I don't like playing the things the same way twice. Sometimes it's not as good, sometimes it's better. So I kind of like to go out there and just, if there's a perfect little classical run or something that needs to be tight together with the band, I'll learn it. But a lot of times what I need to do, I'll kind of improvise as I go, just because I like to amuse myself as much as I do the crowd. So I'm like, what can I play different? And sometimes it's not perfect, but other times it's just a lot of fun to come up with something different.
I love that. That's so important, I think, especially when you're doing the same show. For you're doing the same thing for 25 years.
So
it's great that you do things that bring you joy.
You have to watch that you don't get over the top and being too silly, which
More over the top than your show already is.
I have a real tendency to be a clown sometimes, so I have to watch that. Paul would look at me and be like, "Come on, guy." I'm like, all right. Because
reel it in.
You don't want to, you have to have your rock and roll credibility. I'm like, all right. And I was like, I don't think no matter what I do, would I lose my credibility. But I got where he was coming from. You don't want to be a parody of yourself either. So it's like you go up there and you take it seriously and you do what you do, and you try to do everything you can. I mean, I can't fight age, but I can keep myself, as good as I can, and that's the only thing I try to do. It's just be the best me I can possibly be. That's the only thing I ever tried to be.
Well, you're still relatively young.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of people that I model myself after, but I don't ever try to be somebody else, and I think that's what a lot of guitar players have a problem with. I mean, I just like being me. Even when I did solo records, I sang. I didn't really concentrate on the guitars as much as I did just trying to do singing because it was fun. I didn't want to really join another band because I had Savatage and TSO, so I just wanted to write music and make music and just be myself. So that's kind of the way I am. I'm my own individual. My company, my whole thing is called Faces of Caffery, and it's just all different things that I do. I mean, I like to do a lot of different things. I like, animals and gardening and yard work and my art and my music and the food world and things. So I just try to stay busy. And
you're just a creative in general.
Chris,
that made me think, have you tried one of Dean's tomatoes?
No, I have not tried Dean's tomatoes.
You need
fried Dean's
you need
tomatoes?
To try one.
We need to make fried Dean's tomatoes.
Wait, let's put hot sauce on them.
Right. Okay.
I like that.
Hold on. So he has a tiki bar.
Really?
We'll have to put up a picture of it. Yeah, at his house.
Yes. Well, I
had a tiki bar on my house. And it was a big deal in my neighborhood, and everybody wanted to get on my tiki bar. And it was it was a big deal. And I started literally with a tiki torch and a chair one day, sitting out on my porch under the balcony while it was raining.
I could see it in this neighborhood.
And then it grew and it grew and I kept adding stuff, and it was pouring off my porch, and it was like a thing. How do I get on Dean's tiki bar?
Oh my gosh.
And then we redid the house and built the big house, and a whole different look than the old house. I'm sorry. Then a whole different look than the old house. Yeah, she's a little. Okay.
Yeah,
I have to be careful what I say. So when I redid the house, the tiki bar didn't work.
Oh, okay.
Just
I got it.
Stylized wise, because the other house was kind of frame and kind of looked a little bit more like, an island type house. Not island, but, and this house is a little bit more European, a lot more European
that's
looking.
What I think,
And European and tiki bars don't work. And then I started doing the math to just get, it was going to be $4,000, I think, just to buy the vegetation again. So
oh my gosh.
We never got.
And you had a tiki bar as well?
He's got an amazing tiki bar.
I live on a little river, and I just started to put sand down at one spot that I thought there would be really cool. It's like kind of a waterfall there. And every year I started adding more sand. And, as we got into the COVID time, I kept expanding things. I put like a 9-hole golf course in my backyard that year, but I was like, I'm not leaving, but I won't want to leave. I actually just made it. And then last year I added a tiki bar onto it, and I just expanded, and it looks like a little resort, and it's a lot of fun. I like going down there at night and, you know, listening to music. And I'm trying to figure out a way to get my cell phone signal stinks there because I'm kind of in a valley, but I want to run a router down there, and I might do some live broadcast acoustically down there because it's just a really fun place to hang out. But
That's so cool.
Yeah.
you know, when you travel as much as I have the last, you know, almost 40 years, it's one of these things where you still want to entertain, but sometimes you just don't want to leave. You know, it's like some people crave it. I crave, you know, the time that I get to spend at home, the time watching trees. That I'm living the same. I moved back to take care of my mom, and I moved back into the property that we moved when I was a kid to this place since for 40 years, and I've watched trees go from, you know, 6-inch trees to 50-foot trees, and it's just, I like watching these things come alive every year, and it's just, I'm one of those people that appreciates all the little things in life, I think, a lot more than the big things, because I think it's, you know, anybody can buy something, but me, I just like to, I have barely any neighbors, and I live on thousands of acres of woods, and I get to see a lot of things being home that I really appreciate just as much as I would if I traveled.
You have bears?
There's bears, but I don't really have them by my property, and I have a German Shepherd that scares away all the wild animals.
Really?
So yeah, they know that it's his yard. So, but I think I've seen a bear. Every once in a while, my Ring security things will give an alert, bear alert, and it'll be like a half mile away in this way. I've seen them run down the road. There's wildcats, and
Wildcats.
yeah, there's lots of different animals.
By the way, you talk about touring and time off and stuff like that. People always ask me why are rocks, like all these, you know, from my generation, why are they still touring? And I said, rock stars don't know what to do when they're off the road. It's like they just don't know what to do a lot. And how do you? I mean, like you said, you still want to entertain. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think that probably holds true to a lot of people. Either that or they owe an ex-wife money. But I mean, that could be a legitimate excuse for I don't have any more money. I mean, I do pretty well at what I do, and you know, I'm able to format myself into a lot of different things to make up for what I may need to travel to do to get through life. It's like I'm doing pretty well, and you know, I think I have the benefit of being able to add in the other things without it being only that one thing, that because a lot of people, maybe that's the only thing they do. Me having the hot sauce and having, you know, the stuff with my glass art and that and the other things I do, it enables me to be as productive in the space that I have on my own, and I think that maybe it's that way. Everybody's different. I mean, I don't think I would ever want to stop playing. I think sometimes I just, you know, the traveling gets to be a lot, especially since we travel so heavily for 2 months. Like I'll do personally sometimes as much as 65 shows in 2 months, and
Wow.
You know, when you get that kind of a amount of that, it's not like I don't. It takes a long time to miss playing when you've got that many, and that's so I get to do the things that I do, like this Metal Fest, and I'll play shows on weekends here and there. But
TSO actually plays more shows than days.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because it'll be like two in a day.
The two tours will end November and December, and there's, you know, we'll start mid-November and have 110 shows. Right. You know, so it's pretty crazy, and it's just great. You know, like I said, I feel very, very fortunate to be able to do what I do, and you know, as time goes on, you realize that you're very important to the people that come see the show. When you watch it, generations come of different fans, and I watch the faces of the people in the crowd where different songs hit them different ways. And you know, we've lost members of our band, and you just go through life and you want to be a part of it and be a part of people's lives, and it's just something that I feel fortunate to be a part of. You know, we were talking earlier about, you know, people that we've lost, and
you've had a lot of tragedy, I know.
Yeah, well, just even with him, I mean, 2 of the guitar players that he had worked with, we were talking about Leslie, and we were talking earlier about Dime. You know, it's like, right. and those people, and you had asked me if I had a relationship. The Pantera brothers were really big Savatage fans, and they would come to our show. It was funny. I remember when they first they would come to see us in Texas, and they had that right before Phil had gotten in the band. They had the band, and they were kind of like, you know, they were still heavy, and Dime was still Dime, but they had the hairspray on, and they had their
glam stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and they came onto the tour bus in Texas one day, and it was the brothers, and they were like, dude, you got to hear this record we did, man. It's fucking badass. It's heavy. And it's like,
was that Darrell or was that Vinny? It sounds like Darrell.
Yeah, I think it was Darrell. It was Darrell was talking, and Cowboys had just been done, and I'm like, all right, here, have a drink. And we were, we did what we did, and I got off the road and I listened to that record, and I was like, holy shit, that's heavy. And it was just, that's what, to me, when Pantera was born in my head, as being what they were. From that point, before then, they were just our friends, and I was out at NAMM, and I walked past Vinny, and I said hey to him, and
you're talking about after Darrell died?
Yeah, after Darrell had passed, and he walked about 50 feet away from me, and he stopped, and he turns around, he said, Chris, he's got to come here. And he says, I want to let you know something, that that night, and that's how he said it. He said, that night, it's the last thing I ever did with my brother on the bus before he went on stage was listen to Hall of the Mountain King. It was a Savatage record. So,
wow.
And that we lost Chris. John Oliva lost his brother to a drunk driver, and I heard that, and it was just kind of one of these things. I was like, wow, that the last thing those two brothers did before the worst thing that had ever happened, probably in Vinny's life, was being a part of what it was about to happen in the next hour or so. That the last real bit of joy that those two had together was listening to our music, and it was pretty deep. And it was like he just looked at me and he's like, said, love you, brother, and kept walking, and I was like, wow,
wow, yeah,
it was pretty heavy. So
I haven't talked about this, and I'm not going to talk about it this minute, but the longest, most heartfelt conversation I ever had with Darrell was the day before he died. I was driving from downtown Chicago and caught in traffic, driving home, and he was in the mood for talking and a little road worn, and we had like an hour-long conversation. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty heavy the day before the tragedy. So, these things happen. It's almost like it's meant to be or something. Yeah,
we were on the road with TSO, and my guitar tech, Kyle, had done tech work for everybody in the business, and he'd worked for Dime, and he just walked. I think he walked onto my bus after our show, and he was bawling his eyes out, and I was like, oh, what happened? And he had told me, and unfortunately Kyle had passed right around the same year that Paul did, but we did a lot of salutes to Dime on the road. It was definitely one of these things. He was so close to so many different people. It was so easy to get along with. It was like they all were in that band. So it was one of those things. They're kind of like the Savatage brothers. If somebody hung out with John and Chris Oliva, it wasn't like they were hanging out with two rock and roll stars. They were just hanging out with two guys who like to have fun and play music, and they were just happened to be both extremely good at what they did. And that was the difference between, I think, the Abbotts and the Olivas and a lot of the other people. It's just they were just a special chemistry between the two brothers in each of the families, and they did something so freaking cool that I don't even think they ever really paid too much attention to what they did. They just did it better than everybody else. So.
Right, that was cool. That was a surreal night, by the way. Yeah. It was just like, you just thought it was like out-of-body experience. You didn't realize, you heard what was happening, but you just couldn't process it.
And it's been like too many times since. I mean, it's crazy.
Gun violence in America. I was in a mass shooting. Didn't you reach out to me after that?
Yeah, that's right. I remember then. Yeah. I speak too much about it, but there's a lot of things that can be done that haven't been done.
I was this far away from not being on this podcast today.
Where were you when it happened again?
In Highland Park, the parade.
Parade. Yeah. That was like
I remember I called. I called over to him right when it was done to see if he was okay, and we had spoken about a lot of different things, and I think that besides the left and a lot of other things, I think we clicked together on a lot of things that exist inside of our brains too. So which was pretty cool. So it's like just certain things that
I was running, and I'm running by these storefronts as we're being fired upon, 2 bullets per second, by the way, by a AR rifle.
Yeah.
And I watched the bullet hit the glass, this big storefront window over my head, and the glass just shattered. But you can't see a bullet, but I saw the hole open up out of the corner of my eye.
Wow.
And just the glass shattered, and my friend was behind me, and he got rained on more by the glass than I did. We both had dogs with, and you know, I don't want to talk about the whole thing now, but Susie was under a metal bench, housing a little girl whose mother got shot. It was a thing. Yeah. So,
anyway, back to Wilbur.
Yeah. I just want to say gun violence in America is like, it's just so prevalent. Yeah. And Darrell was killed by a dude who never should have had a gun. He was ejected from the military because he was mental or whatever they call it. And
I never, with anything that happens like that, I don't understand people that are willing to not only take that person's life, but you take everybody involved with their life with them. It's like you're to have that kind of selfishness. It's like,
you rob so many people.
It doesn't make it, not that any of it ever should make sense to you, but it's just whatever it is that happens. But like I said, I'm not.
Well, it's a thing in America, It just happens, and it's
a sad.
I mean, I think what's incredible is, like, especially the two of you have chosen to continue to honor him and to honor the work that he did, and that's really something that lives on. I think
everybody in the metal world did, and it's one of these things when you listen to people like him when you were a little kid, even with like Chris, the people I work with or stuff like that, you were there playing with them, but you didn't really realize exactly how good they were, so you analyzed their playing in pieces. Right. So when you go back and look at the videos and play the music and this and that, it's like, and he was like that, when he was in his teenage years. And it's just like some people were just put down differently when they grabbed that instrument. And Dime and Chris Oliva were two people that had distinct sounds on their own, and they were both so incredibly amazing at being, like I said, themselves. There was only one Dime, and it's very rare that you can have guitar players that you can attach their name to a sound. Yeah. And Dime was one of those people. There was a Dimebag sound, and Chris Oliva had a very distinct sound with Savatage. And there's not a lot of people that have that. There's a lot of people from the '80s metal generation that all were able to play great guitar, but there was really only one Randy Rhoads. It's like
that's why they're the greats.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's just something about them that nobody else could do.
Exactly,
and that's it. But is there anything about Jennifer? Do you have questions? Do we have questions,
Jennifer,
or do we cover everything?
Once over on your hair, it's a little.
We honestly talked about everything that you and I had talked about.
Jennifer,
what?
Your hair's a little.
What?
Her
Crazy?
hair's fine.
I can't be as fabulous as these boys. You guys don't even have to try. You guys just look so cool.
I told one of my guys at work the other day. You know what I said?
What?
You recording? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I said, I don't even know what girls see in guys.
It's more what they don't see.
Look, I've said it a million times. If I was a girl, I would be a lesbian. That's all I have to say. A million times.
But I guess that's my perspective. Okay.
I guess if I could ask you any question, I would say you've been on tour all over the world, really. Do you have any little spots that are just special to you that when you go to that spot, you really look forward to going there? Like a restaurant, or maybe it's a bookshop or a record store. Like, is there anywhere that when you're like, oh, I'm going to Paris, I'm definitely going to hit up this place? Or
that can depend on a lot on how much time you have. But I mean, when I was younger, I started going to the Disney parks. So I'm a big theme park person. They actually built a Legoland in my town, and I actually have a minifigure, and so does Wilbur in Legoland, New York. But I love theme parks. I mean, it really all depends where you are. As far as food goes, I don't like to eat before I play too much. So if I have days off, I'll get to do that. And then the other thing is, wherever you travel, sometimes the fans are actually really exciting. Places like Greece or South America, these people don't have a lot in their lives besides the music. So especially before technology took over people's lives, and 20 years ago, before cell phones took over, when you saw kids, this was the only chance they had to see you. So you would go to some of these places and they just appreciated you, I think, in a different, not that it's different now, but the energy was so crazy and it was so fun. But I think, like I said, it depends on where you are and how much time off you have. I mean, sometimes your favorite places are closed when you get there. You know,
Right.
you walk around. I was like, right here. I know there was, but you know, it all depends where you are. Like I said, if I'm in New York City where I live my whole life, I still know tons of places I can go there. The problem is, do I have enough time on the day off to get to them in a place like that? But
Yeah.
it really depends.
Are there any comforts when you're on the road, food wise? Like, do you have a certain type of espresso that you really love, or?
I mean, everybody kind of, even though I had a song called Pisses Me Off on my one solo record where I said Starbucks pisses me off, $5 a cup, what the fuck is up? We all tend to get to Starbucks, even if, you know, just because it's something that you're all familiar with everywhere you go. I mean, I'm a junk food junkie, which is probably one of my weaknesses on the road, but I'm so busy with TSO that I could eat what I want.
Yeah.
But, you know, I like pizza a lot. I like macaroni and cheese, things like that. Really fun foods. I like finding good wings or things, but I also like to go for a really, really good steak. You know, it all depends. I mean, I'm a foodie, so it's like I try different things. It all depends where I am, you know, and that's as far as the food goes, has a lot to do with that. A lot of the people will love to go for sushi. A lot of people will love to go for this, and we do have a lot of vegan people on our tours now that you know, they'll find different restaurants that you never had seen before or would even be looking for that are opening a lot more than that now. They're everywhere, and so that whole food world's kind of changed a lot since we at first toured. You basically had A, B, and C, and now it's like, you know, all the way up to, you know, M and NLP, all these different places that are all different foods.
I've got a food
so
question.
many places.
Yeah.
Where's your favorite place to get mussels?
Oh,
No, actually, the question: do you? That was a joke.
I know.
Okay, but do you eat mussels? Is my question, or are you just done with mussels?
No, that one I can't eat anymore.
I was gonna
but
say.
you haven't eaten a mussel since?
No, I have not.
Okay.
And I've been really conscious of that because they told me even if I took the allergy test, if it showed up where it wasn't there, that whatever happened that made it show up in my allergy test could happen again. So I've just eliminated them or any seafood that's been cooked near them.
Yeah.
Was that insensitive, my question?
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Canceled.
That's okay. I mean, I know people that are heavily gluten, you know, free, that some people pretend to be gluten free and other people actually can get a reaction like mine from eating the wheat, you know, so it all depends. You have to take it seriously. And that I realized from that, you know, I don't ever doubt somebody's allergy problems when they tell them to me.
Mm-hmm. My other question, is kind of a similar thing, is that you've met a lot of people. Have you met anybody on the road that just really influenced you in a way that maybe they didn't realize? Like if you met somebody, I don't know, in passing that said something to you or that really kind of stuck with you? Because Dean said that one of the best compliments he ever got was just from somebody on the street saying that they liked his style.
Well, it was mine and Susie's style, but
your style.
I have to clarify that.
Well, I think when I was a little kid, I didn't pay nearly enough attention to lyrics because I was a guitar player learning guitar. Half the time I made up my own James Brown lyric versions of everybody's songs. It's like I didn't know what anybody's lyrics were, and I didn't really care that much. But Savatage was in Europe at one point in time, and I forget where we were playing, but this kid had traveled to see Savatage from, I think it was either Egypt or Brazil or somewhere. I was seeing a festival in Europe. And he came up to me and he said that, you know, one of the songs, I believe it was the Savatage song, Believe, he said that song saved his life. And Paul would always talk about how important lyrics were. And, you know, I paid attention to what he said. But when that person said that, it really made you think. And Paul had said, you know, anybody can write a song about a car or a girl, no offense, but he goes, to write a song that literally changes somebody's life and that's where he was putting these messages in his lyrics. And then I realized from that point that that's why Savatage connected with so many people in these countries around the world. Once Paul started writing the lyrics for the band, is that those messages went and attached people to it. And I see it with TSO, you know, we're singing like a song called Ornament where they're talking about somebody who used to be, in that story, the girl runs away from home and she's not at the family's home for Christmas, but there's a lot of people in that audience that lost their mother or family member that year, and you're used to see them in the crowd and you see them there crying in that song. So you realize that. And when I went to write my solo records, I started to pay a more conscious effort to that. So I think overall, I'd have to say seriously, it's not somebody you run into on the road, I think that they always say there's points in time when your life are different than they were before, and it'll never be the same again. I'd have to say that moment in my life was definitely for a ton of different reasons, but when I had met Paul, because I think that was, changed, life-changing into the point where nothing was ever the same once that guy came into my life. And the way that, I work on songs and write music and do a lot of things that I do is kind of molded after, the having him as a mentor. But like I said, him just coming into my life was one of those moments. So, and I think more than anything, that changes the way that maybe I'm seen by people. So if somebody says that they meet somebody, apart from the times when I've been out hammered somewhere and said something stupid, but I think for the most part nowadays, I just try to be somebody that can be a positive note when they are done seeing you, and to say that you did do something good or you were nice, and just try to appreciate it, because I know that I'm not going to mention by names, but I met musicians when I was younger that I really idolized, and they treated me like a pile of dog shit when I met them, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to make sure I never do that to somebody, no matter how tired I am. It's like because that it really made you feel like, wow, that this person
shatters,
couldn't even smile or I just asked them to sign, so I do all this later. Like, okay,
we got a little hint there because it had an accent. Wasn't Michael Schenker, was it?
No, actually, Michael was really cool. Michael walked past a crowd of people. We played his show with UFO in Spain. He walked past a crowd of people because he liked to drive to his shows. So it's kind of funny. And he was with his girlfriend or whoever, who was with a woman that he was with there, traveling to and from the show. And a crowd of people outside were stopping. He was trying to run to his car. And I said to Michael, I said, hey, Mike, I'm Chris with you, because I not really met him in person with that, and I said, first with Savatage, and Paul told me to make sure I said hi. He said, hey. And he stopped and talked to me for like 5 minutes in front of. He was running to leave, and he stopped and talked, and he signed a couple UFO CDs. I actually at the time you had to travel with CDs to listen to music, so I had like Strangers in the Night and Obsession were in my CD case that I had on the tour bus, and he signed those CDs, and he was really nice, and he was like, with me, where I have a time limit of what we could do today, I was like, I have to go, because he was ready to keep talking, but he's never done that. But just maybe somebody else with an accent did, but I'm not going to mention any place. Sweden. I'm not going to. No, it's all right.
Okay, so it wasn't Rudolph. Okay.
No, Rudolph was very nice too.
Rudolph's cool. I know both of them, and they're both.
What's funny? Real quick, we lost a keyboard player in TSO. His name is Vitalij Kuprij, one of the greatest musicians I ever worked with in my life. And TSO was playing Europe, and we were doing a Beethoven's Last Night tour there. And Rudolph was there at one of the shows with people from our marketing company there. And Vitalij walks up to Rudolph, and he'd shaved. He goes, Michael, I love your guitar playing. And I was like, Vitalij, that's not Michael.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
once he shaved, he kind of looked, he took away the Rudolph mustache. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah, thanks, Vitalij. You made it to my story, my podcast.
Okay, well, this has been great.
No, thank you. I had a lot of fun. I'm glad we had a chance to get it done. And like I said, I like to drive, and I decided to leave from New York in a car so I could bring extra guitars. And we brought those couple ones that
we've got the Wizard here, and we've got the
one of the Tigers.
The Tigers, and we're going to
get some photos.
We'll get some photos somewhere in the house.
Yeah.
The studio's in my house.
Exactly.
Right. We talked about that. Okay. Anything else, Jen?
I just wanted to say it was really cool, or it has been really cool to get to know you. And there's so much more, and I learned this about Dean as well, than what you see at face value. Like, you've been all over the world, and you've done so many things. You have so many other passions, like your sea glass, and it's great that you give back. And I just think it's really, what you talked about, making an impact. Like, you made an impact on me. I just met you, but I think it's really inspiring to hear how you live your life and the way that you approach everything, and you have so many different types of things that you do, and I admire it a lot.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me, and obviously Dean's made a lot of differences in mine. It's like you meet him, and you don't know exactly how somebody's going to be that has the name and a reputation. And he's always treated me like I was somebody he knew his whole entire life, and I always have appreciated that. And it's been nice to meet you. It's been a lot of fun. I haven't, I'd been really busy and didn't really spend any time thinking about it, but it's just fun to have my brain just open up and remember a lot of fun things with you guys. And I hope that that everybody enjoys it when they see it. And thanks again for having me here.
Yeah, thanks for having me in.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Let's go party, have a drink, whatever. Hit the road.
Yeah, put me on the road to drive to New York. Give me some scotch already. Some scotch. I'll hit the road.
Okay. We're done. We're out.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, a little end of show business. What is it, Jennifer?
If you enjoy the podcast, if you enjoy a lot of this behind the scenes things with a lot of the musicians that you really look up to and admire, hearing about Dean, we would really appreciate if you hit that subscribe, like, or ring the bell button. Love the comments. If there's anything that you want to hear that we didn't talk about, or if you have ideas or questions for some of your biggest, most admired icons, we would love to hear about them in the comments. Join us for all of our future podcasts because we have a lot coming your way.
Sounds good. Okay, well, thanks so much. No 20 questions today because we had Chris on and we answered about 100 questions there.
Until next time.
Okay, great. Bye-bye.
Bye.